Welcome to Speak of the Devils, the premier podcast for Sun Devil football. I'm Brad Denny with 3TV.
You know, Brad, I think we might have to change that introduction of being the premier podcast for the Big 12 champion and college football playoff bound Sun Devil football. And I'm Joe Healy with DevilsDigest.com.
Yeah, Joe, I happened to consult the holy spreadsheet that has all the list of our guests. That has obviously created so much interest in the show over the years. All the data of our runtime. We've done 887 hours of content across all the Speak of the Devils releases. And on Saturday, our emergency episode, which hopefully y'all downloaded and listened to or caught on YouTube, was our 700th release. This being, of course, now 701. And as you mentioned, this is the first time that we've actually been able to discuss a conference champion Sun Devil squad.
It's unbelievable. I mean, the shock is still there. I think everybody felt and feels just about the same since Saturday. I mean, it is this emotion that's difficult to express, difficult to describe. Number one, because it is such a rarity around here. As we know, it's the first time in 11 years that ASU has been in a position to battle for a conference championship. First time since 1996 where ASU has outright won a conference championship. I loved it. You know, you look on Twitter and you see this list of every power conference team and the last time that they won a conference championship. And, you know, before, as of a week ago, ASU would have been kind of far down on the list there in 1996. But now, literally right at the top, alphabetically, chronologically, when you start with A and you win this year, that's a good thing happening there. But, man, it is what a time to be alive. These high magnitude, high stakes situations that ASU is in and succeeding marvelously in. It just does not seem real. It's like one of those pinch me type of moments to think that it's not just that ASU had a good season. It's not just that they bounced back from those back-to-back 3-win seasons. It's not just that ASU reclaimed the Territorial Cup. It's that it's doing things that are on the border of unprecedented and are already in the conversation of highly elite, meaning things that have happened maybe only a couple times in program history. That's where things are. And as we've been saying in recent shows under this amazing win streak that ASU's on, things can still get even better.
Yeah, it was kind of that list. I saw that same list, and it had such a Doug Tamaro feel to it because, like, whenever ASU would have everything they do anything good, people always tweet them. When was the last time ASU did this? Tonight.
Yeah.
And so that along those same lines, and I don't know when it happened. It had to be somewhere between maybe the first half of K-State but now it got to a point where earlier before that, it was like ASU did something amazing, or it was like, oh, this is kind of surprising, but I don't know. The last couple of weeks now, it's like that pendulum has shifted a little bit. Now it's like, no, this is a legitimately good, very good, great. I don't know. We'll see where they ultimately lie. But team that we expect this kind of performance, and as we'll dive into in a second, what they did to Iowa State to put this not just clinch the Big 12 title, but to emphatically get that first round bye, an unfathomable accomplishment just a couple months ago. But the way they did that was just like, yeah, that's what the Sun Devils do.
Yeah, I think it's. I was thinking about it earlier today, and this is a unique opportunity, like for us, because we can just kind of hang out, do our thing, talk to y'all about ball here. There's no game yet to preview. We don't have to jump from step A to step B. It's been such a blur over the last month or so because ASU has really been in these zero margin for error situations. Well, if you lose that BYU game, you're out of the picture. If you lose to Arizona, you're out of that picture. If you lose to Iowa State, you're out of that picture. Of course, that picture being either getting into the conference championship game or getting into the college football playoff. So, it's not a deal like if we compare it, say, to 1996, where ASU had a dominant run through the whole season, wrapped up the Rose Bowl with a couple games to go. You knew their destiny. Obviously, things could go a little different direction if they would have ended up losing some games at the end there. But ASU this season, you just can't look ahead, or you couldn't look ahead too far, because every single week for the last month or so, it's kind of do or die. Like, if you don't win then it doesn't matter. I mean, how many times have we heard Kenny Dillingham, whether it's national rankings, whether it's college football playoff rankings, or just talking about the college football playoff landscape? How many times in recent weeks have we heard him talk about things kind of in a nonchalant fashion of, hey, it doesn't matter right now because if we don't go out and do our job on Saturday, it's not going to matter. All right, well, those times are in the past now. We are very decisively at the spot where that work obviously has added up. ASU has put itself in the best position it's been in nearly 30 years to compete for a national championship, and that's where it is. And even saying those words still seems hypothetical. Like it's the, bless his heart, the Todd Graham, national championship wristbands in the preseason, or, the
Ray Anderson expectations.
Exactly. The top, yeah, it's kind of funny that, ASU is guaranteed to be a top 50. I don't, that's speculation for another time as far as like, what's the worst ASU could be ranked at the end of the year?
They're already in the Elite Eight.
Yeah. So, all that needed for ASU to jump into the top 15 is for the person who made that claim just to be gone, among other things. But that was a very important step. So it is completely surreal, and I don't know, it's crazy. It's crazy to go on social media. It's crazy to look, watch ESPN Game Day or just a day of college football games or advertisements for, college football playoff selection shows. And ASU is littered everywhere through that. Again, this does not feel real, but this run is amazing, and this is just a team that you can't count out, so it could get even more enjoyable. But we have this few-week period of time until New Year's Day in Atlanta, Georgia, when ASU takes on either Texas or Clemson, as we'll break down in greater detail as the show goes on. We've got a little time to kind of reminisce back on it and just really take a breath. I don't think anybody has really breathed in the last little bit. It's been such an exciting ride to be on.
Yeah, and like you made a good point there, just like kind of like ASU had to be perfect to even get to this point. So it's like their playoffs started like 4 weeks ago or something. Like they had no margin for error, but this team kept rising to the occasion, and in like I think progressively more impressive fashion of taking care of K-State on the road, holding off BYU. What did you say? Eviscerating U of A?
Among the other verbs that were used, but that was my favorite one, yes.
And then, of course, going to Jerry World and just really laying a thorough beating on Iowa State to secure the official playoff spot. We'll talk about that in a second. But, let's just, maybe talk about the game a little bit. Of course, we did the emergency episode, but that game was just like early on, Joe, it seemed like there were some flashes of maybe some like old school Big 12 because ASU went down. Looked like they were gonna punch it in, had to settle for field goal, but just like both teams early on, like there was maybe gonna be like 50-49 old school Big 12. No defense could stop the other, like a track meet in happening. But then ultimately, some stops did come, and that ASU killer mentality, that twist the knife mentality that Kenny wanted, kind of showed itself near the end of that first half when ASU was able to get that 2-score lead. And then once they got that first turnover and Javen Robinson knocked that ball out, that was just the moment where, the route was on.
Yeah, I mean, that first quarter, it was, obviously a little nervous. It was back and forth, not much defense going on. It was one of those deals where it was almost like an arena league game. And you're thinking, man, is ASU behind the 8 ball? Because like they started with the field goal, but then Iowa State answered with a touchdown. So you kind of have that little, edge as you continue to score where you're kind of playing from behind there. Obviously, things got off to a very quick start. Cam Scadaboo doing what he does there on was it the first play or
first play, 28 yards?
Yeah, just looking like he's going to set a tone.
Shimon Mateer absolutely just took a soul from some Cyclone defender too to bust that open.
Yeah, and he had a great tweet, did Mateer, after the game, just talking about how he likes to block for Scat, and obviously he's had a very good year, catching the ball. He's really lived up to expectations. He was an all conference honors recipient. So you see that aspect of things, and that's just, I mean, it's incredible to see what the emotions and energy of this team are, because the unselfishness when you win games like ASU's been doing and do it at a high level and make your way to the place that they are, people take a lot of pride and joy in doing the simple things because it's showing that those simple basic things are what get you to a championship level. But yeah, back to the game. Yeah, for that first little bit, it seemed like it was going to be very back and forth, like you talk about. Yeah, these like old Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Oklahoma era Big 12 games where there's just literally no defense and the last team to touch the ball wins the game. But then it was, a somewhat controversial call, at least in the eyes of Iowa State fans, because, tend to follow some on social media where, a a pass that was defended, and they thought there could be a pass interference called on ASU. Didn't go that way, and that really was kind of a momentum shift that turned out favorable for the Sun Devils, because really from that particular point is really when ASU went off to the races.
Yeah, that's true. And so, yeah, when they were kind of, when that, as you mentioned, kind of the 7-3 initial start, you can maybe kind of to swing back the other way. Also, another early key point was that 4th and 1 call that ASU had. Kenny gambling early. We knew this was going to happen, but Marcus Arroyo made the call to, hell, let's go deep. He told a story on radio today of just how when he made that call, he heard crickets.
Yeah, I heard that was what he was talking about. Yeah, like he wasn't sure if there was a bad signal or communication issues, or if people were just like, man, what the hell are you doing? Or whatever it might have been. But, I mean, yeah, it just showed that ASU wasn't afraid to take chances. It wasn't playing overly conservative, especially in the pass game without Jordan Tyson. They just didn't play scared that, okay, our number one guy, our 1,000-yard first-team all-conference guys is out there, or we can't take chances in the run game, or excuse me, in the pass game, because we just don't have our main target out there. No, there's just the next man up, and through that completion and run, I mean, that was a huge thing. Obviously, we'll talk about how the wide receivers stepped up, but that was probably one of the biggest first examples of the wide receivers stepping up in Jordan Tyson's absence by that play that Stovall did.
Yeah, and he wasn't done. I mean, he put together a good game because, we were talking about that. They needed something there because Scat did Scat things, and ASU was going to run the ball on that Iowa State defense that we talked about had real issues defending the run all season long. But Stovall and Xavier Guillory making 2 touchdown catches, making the most, and just 2 catches in the game, both end up in the end zone. And one, I from my spot in the press box did not appreciate the degree of difficulty of that second one. And it was kind of funny after the game that somebody asked Guillory about playing with Sam. He's he makes it easy, and then Sam's quipped like, I did not make that easy for you on the second one.
Yeah, and that same here, because it's just kind of watching it, and that was on the heels. I think was that like after the second or the third. It was in that midst of turnover, touchdown, turnover, like it was just this sequence where at that point, it was like a numbness of bliss and euphoria, because you're like, all right, like ASU is winning this game now. But yeah, that catch was incredible. It was like some, N'Keal Harry type of stuff. Just incredible. Again, we were just talking a moment ago about how the wide receivers stepped up. Stovall did so with the receptions and the yards. Guillory doing so with those 2 touchdowns. I mean, the run that he's been on is something that's incredible to see over these last handful of games. Some major plays being made. But man, I'm looking back at it, and it's something that you don't really see the forest for the trees, when you're in the heat of the moment there. But man, like ASU, let's see here. They outscored Iowa State a 35-0 run, basically, in the middle of the game. And that's, you talk about those middle eights. That's from about the 11-minute mark of the second quarter through the 3-minute mark of the third quarter, the 35-point run. That's going to win you some games and championships.
Yeah, and also, on the receiver point, got to give out shout out to Malik McLean coming from scout team, and a guy who's preserving that red shirt, but he flashing some stuff about what he can do as a full-time member in 2025 with a 43-yard reception on a deep bomb. But yeah, just the offensive line was dominant, pushing folks around up front. But what more can we say about Cameron Skattebo? I mean, 208 yards, 3 touchdowns, untackleable, several key runs that just were like the trademark him at this point, where you think 2 or 3 times he's done, he's down, the end of the run. No, he's still going. Even Guillory talked about just downfield blocking for him. He's like, okay, I'll be blocking and turn around. Okay, he's still going. I'll block and block, and turn around again. Oh my God, he's still going again. I got to run down. It's just routine, but still awe-inspiring at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that there's ever been a runner at ASU that I've ever seen that runs with just the ferocity that he does. It's basically that in a nonverbal way, he's legitimately daring people to bring him down, challenging them to do so. Never seen that around here. And, there could have been a lot of different forces at play. Cam is obviously a guy that just brings it every week. But, with Jordan Tyson being out, I'm sure that he looked himself in the mirror and knew that, we're going to win this game. It's going to be behind a very big day by me. I know that I personally got involved in some debates and discussions online, being very disappointed that the Big 12 did not name Skattebo the conference's offensive player of the year. I don't know if that fuels any sort of motivation. I don't know if, obviously just today we're recording here on Monday, as far as the Heisman finalists, that decision was made today, but I don't know if just, the trending aspects about that, about who would be involved. I don't know if any of these personal awards are things that are even on his radar or if they're motivators, but whatever it was, he just came out motivated, whether that's just because he's playing a ball game and there was a lot on the line or because that was the fact and those other things really doesn't matter, because even for him, he looked like he had an extra element to his game on Saturday. Like he had an extra gear. Like this was one of those, big time players stepping up in big time games kind of thing. Because again, he's been running like that throughout the season, but just to do it as many times as he did in that game, and there were some runs that were even better than he's had throughout the course of the season. So it was just very evident that he knew how much his performance was going to dictate ASU's ability to win the game. And he just saw that as a challenge, stepped up to and exceeded that challenge. And that's how you have ASU just blowing out Iowa State.
Yeah, a big part of that knife twisting. Of course, Scat, with the 3 total touchdowns, but that defense that got pushed around over those first 3 drives, then over the next 5 Cyclone possessions gave up a total of 54 yards, while the game was still at varying levels of competitive before ASU did ultimately put in all the backups. But and over those 5 drives, 3 consecutive, I should say, also ended in turnovers. Javen Robinson got the forced fumble early on in that first drive of the second half. ASU turned that quickly into a touchdown, and then that was just when things just really ramped up. And the secondary was good again. Keith Abney, as you mentioned, should be a guy that, should be had an interception. Maybe he was a guy that gets snubbed for all conference honors as well. ASU just had maybe some blood in the water, and just maybe after some issues early on, and you credit the Cyclones. They were able to move the ball effectively. The pass game got going. More issues with ASU's pass rush, letting opposing quarterbacks get a little too comfortable. But ultimately, there's a defense that continues to make plays in the key moments, whether it's generating turnovers or getting stops, or early on forcing them into field goal situations. Just this complementary football in this all around effort has just been over these last 3, 4, 5, 6 games has been really impressive.
Yeah, and talking about the defense, I mean it's wild to think of the narrative heading into the game was the concern about, okay, Iowa State's got the 3rd best pass defense in the country, and ASU's down their top wide receiver. Is this going to be too much for ASU to overcome? Are they going to have to be too one-sided? Is it going to be too predictable just going to scat? And I mean, Sam Levitt, the passing numbers themselves they're not going to set any records, 219 passing yards, but he had 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, completed 12 of 17 passing attempts that he had. Iowa State struggled by comparison, much more so than ASU throwing the ball or just offense in general. So that was one of those games. It was kind of similar to like the BYU games. The ASU has taken some teams very far out of their element. There have been some teams that the Devils have played that, the statistics leading up to that point, and we're talking about late stages of the season, not just a team that played maybe one game, and those are some anomalies as far as like the statistics. But ASU has done things to teams this year that they don't normally do, whether that's something like being able to throw a little bit more than a team typically allows or scoring many more points. Iowa State had a very good scoring defense. They allowed 45 points. ASU has effectively been taking other teams completely out of their comfort zone and forcing things into ASU's comfort zone.
Yeah, they just continue to dictate the game, dictate the game flow, and this is something I think it goes back to the culture of the program, and just the belief that it feels like about 2/3 of the way through the season, and as ASU's success is becoming more evident, and the further into a season is like that's who you are. This isn't a flash in the pan, hot start that just ultimately fizzles out, but. About 2/3 the way through, I think I sensed a change in this team that went from just like, okay, we're really enjoying this, we liking the success, to, no, we're really good. Actually, we're not just some feel good story. We're a team that needs to be reckoned with, that can compete, that can be a contender for the conference and perhaps even larger things. And Kenny talked about it after one of the late season wins about how the pregame meal, typically a pretty jovial affair. Laughter, music, but at that point it was very quiet, and everybody's telling like, okay, this is gonna be really bad, really good. Turned out to be really good, and I sense that same kind of business-like killer instinct type approach coming through, and we're seeing that in terms of just the all around play, all phases functioning well, but also just the ability to twist the knife. And ASU's not just running out having these fast starts and letting teams come back in. They're killing people.
Yeah, and I think that that Kansas State game was really a turning point, and I think what you've seen in the last month or so, and this is a disposition that I strongly suggest that Sun Devil fans embrace if they haven't already, though a lot are making the turn, is you don't see this ASU team acting like it's an underdog. Like they got to go out and surprise the world and shock the world, and hey, we can really do this, and everybody's counting us out, that sort of thing. We expect to beat the team in front of us no matter who they are, no matter what number is attached to them, no matter what their name is or what their history is, no matter what people think. It's not, shocking the world or sneaking up on people. It's kicking down the door and punching people in the mouth. And that's what's been happening in these last few weeks. That's how you don't let a team with nothing to lose despite nothing to play for, like Arizona, to sneak up on you. You obliterate them. You don't allow Iowa State, a top 20 team that had won 10 games, to take away this magical season from you. You put your boot directly on their throat. That's what ASU's done, especially his last two games. I think between that Kansas State and those BYU games, especially the BYU game, I think, you really just saw this team mature and add confidence, because we've seen, if you kind of chunk out the last handful of games, there were those times before where ASU was starting slow, but then there would be those second half surges. And then you had like Kansas State, BYU with great first halves, then these chaotic second halves. Now you have these last two games, and I understand that Arizona is not at the level of BYU, Kansas State, or Iowa State, far from it. But these last two games, you've seen ASU completely dominate. So to me, that shows that this program, this team, is really figuring out that this is not just a feel-good story. This is not just a, hey, we're bowl eligible after 2 years of 3 wins. It's not that. It's buying into the goals and the expectations and the standards of Kenny Dillingham that he had preached from day one, even when he came in off a 3-win season, even though he produced a 3-win season. It's the people, the players, the entire staff, everybody in the program have bought in and just don't really care about any outside noise. And they're just going out and they're playing great football and they're just smacking people around. Now, the stakes are going to rise dramatically here in the coming weeks. But what ASU's been doing, this is among the most confident I've ever seen ASU be.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I mean, there's a confidence, but it's not just like, okay, we can do this. It's like, we're gonna do this. And even just with the offense putting up nearly 50 on one of the best scoring defenses in the country, the defense just putting up 3 straight turnovers and making the plays in the key moments and basically giving up 10 points, during the time where the game was perhaps in question. Even ASU special teams. I mean, Carson Kiefer got the nod at kicker. Yeah. He made from 32, made us all the extra points. I mean, I was trying to think, like, when did we find have the most complete and impressive game by ASU since when? I mean, I don't know. Like, all 3 phases were hitting, in addition to the stakes, the high stakes of a conference title. I mean, it was just the best possible play, the most complete play in the biggest moment.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to do a lot of thinking to figure that out, and you might be grasping at straws, or you might have to go back, to some of those marquee seasons like 1996 or something like that. Because again, if you combine the magnitude of the game and just the huge difference between winning and losing, it would have, no matter what, even if ASU would have lost 45-19 in that game, it's still a massively successful season. And no disrespect to this bowl game, but if you're going to like the Alamo Bowl, when you had the opportunity to get into playoff, that's one of those things that can kind of haunt you and keep you up at night, because we don't know how common this sort of opportunity is going to come about. So that difference and just how much is needed and valuable within this community and this fan base to get as much momentum as possible, to try to put things over the top, to keep some higher than average level success, and to have that on a consistent basis. It obviously makes a huge deal to go to the college football playoff versus not. So that game, that was a team that had goals, that had expectations, that respected, but I'm sure quite frankly didn't care who was lined up against them because they knew that if they played the game the way that they play it with the players that they have, that they weren't going to be stopped.
All right. So, I mean, obviously they take home the Big 12 crown. They punch their ticket to the playoff. And thanks to perhaps Clemson and some of the late game miracles that they were able to pull off, ASU slipped into the bye level. Now, there was some question about whether ASU did with their impressive win should get the 3, jump Boise State, and that would have in essence sent them to the Fiesta Bowl, a home game. Unfortunately, Joe, no, it was a 4 seed ASU, as you mentioned, going to the Peach Bowl, facing off against Texas Clemson. The winner of that game, which will be on December 21st, ASU will play them in the Peach Bowl on January 1st. I mean, Boise State deserves to be in the playoff.
Yeah.
They do not deserve to be ahead of Arizona State.
Yeah, no, I think that's a no-brainer. I question whether they deserve a bye. If your main point of argument is a close loss to the number 1 team in the country, then you don't have much of an argument. Bottom line.
Yep.
That's it. Now then, as incredible as it would have been to get the higher seed, as incredible as it would have been to obviously play a game in the Fiesta Bowl, ASU has not been to the Fiesta Bowl since New Year's of '83 off the '82 season. It's a bowl game that was essentially created for ASU back in the early '70s. I do like the draw better.
Much better.
So that is what helps me sleep at night, because it's all fun and all great if you're the higher seed and you're playing in your backyard. But if you're playing a much tougher team, which, we're talking about like the likelihood of playing Penn State versus Texas, or even like if Clemson can get by Texas somehow, that could be very interesting. But yeah, the draw I'm good with as far as just the big picture. But man, it would have been something special to see him at the Fiesta Bowl.
Yeah, so we'll dive much more into that game and the game preview, especially after we didn't know who is actually going to be facing off against the Devils. Whether it is the Dabo and the Clemson Tigers, or perhaps Quinn Ewers, Arch Manning, and the Texas Longhorns. What that would have been a 2007 Holiday Bowl rematch.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Hopefully, a lot better than that one though. That was kind of a dumpster fire. Yeah.
All right, so let's close things out now, kind of maybe a little reverse order. Now, let's get to some news items, though, after we talk about the big accomplishments. Cam Scadaboo is not a Heisman finalist, Joe. What the hell?
Yeah, that's pretty ridiculous. I get the argument of the 2 players that are perceived to be the top 2, between Gene T and Travis Hunter.
Yep.
They have 4. And I can certainly understand, the 2 quarterbacks that are going to be there. Like, there's an argument for both, but it's like one's not playing in the playoff, and Scat's doing some amazing things, and not that it's a popularity, contest, but I would say that right here, right now, Cam Scadaboo is probably one of like the 2 to 4 most popular college football players.
Yeah.
For people like that don't have skin in the game, if you're not the fan of another team that, would, or even, there are a lot of people that like those teams that you just can't, deny it. Like we said for the Arizona preview, a guy like McMillan, like you'd be a clown and a buffoon to try to like belittle what he can do on the football field because he's just so good, and Scat falls in that same category. So, that is disappointing because, let's just pull out some statistics because we like that sort of thing. So we can celebrate Scott a little bit, and we can, really drive home the bozo nature of the decision not to have him at the award show there. So over the weekend, he broke ASU's single-season all-purpose yardage mark. That's a very good thing to do. It's even impressive when that mark was set in 1950 by a man named Whizzer White. Scat now has 2,074 all-purpose yards. He is tied with Whizzer White again from 1950 in the total touchdown category in a single season with 22. He is tied with Woody Green for the single-season rushing touchdown mark of 19. So if he scores a touchdown in any capacity for the rest of the season, he's going to single-handedly have the single-season touchdown mark for ASU. He's 75 rushing yards away from breaking Eno Benjamin's single-season record from 2018. He probably won't get there, but he's 38 carries from breaking Eno's single season record in that regard. So we're talking about stuff, as far as ASU is concerned, things that haven't been done in decades. So he's the people's champion. He's the one walking into Mountain America Stadium in a high school football game at halftime with his teammates.
That was a cool move.
Raising that WWE championship belt of the Big 12 that he got from, I believe, Jimmy Uso and Sami Zayn. I know there's some representatives from WWE there, which is pretty awesome. So he's the people's champion.
Also, I believe he's the first Big 12 back to have 1,500 rushing and 500 receiving yards in a single season. And in crossing the 2,000 yards from scrimmage, he became, I believe, just 100th FBS player.
Think of the Big 12 backs. You're talking Ricky Williams. You're talking, Adrian Peterson, Cedric Benson. The list goes on as far as the ones that have come through the Big 12 conference. You've got some, Heisman Trophy winners or all-time leading rushers in college football or top NFL picks. None of them did that. Scat did.
Yeah, and so 100 players in FBS history have ever got 2,000 yards from scrimmage. Scat's one of them. Not too shabby. And getting that WWE title belt, it just like there's nobody that could have left that stadium with that belt other than Scat, because it was the most perfect. And to his credit, like he was after he got the belt and he presented it to him, he went to his offensive lineman, had them sign it as well in appreciation for what they were able to do. And then obviously, he can't do the things that he does without the help of that offensive line, blowing those holes open for him and all the hard work that he's done. It was some funny we were finishing up our TV live shots on Saturday, and players were slowly kind of filing out after things had settled down, getting back to the bus to head back to town. And he walks by and he's like, "Where's my belt? Where's my?" And somebody somehow in the commotion lost the belt.
Goodness,
he found it, but there was kind of a moment there, just like anything that was going on. But
it's like somebody in like a wedding party losing the ring, man.
Yeah, it really is. Like of all the things. Now there was, of course, disappointment. He's not a Heisman finalist, but as we maybe transition to some all conference awards. Now this isn't like a situation where ASU. I actually went back. I looked at our preseason prediction spreadsheet, and like one of the categories was total number of first and second team all conference players that from ASU.
Probably like one or two.
We both. I think everybody had one. Jordy Ham had two. My one did make it, Xavier Alford, but he was just one of four on the first team, and also four ASU Sun Devils were on the second team. Starting with those first teamers, of course. Scat made that list. Alford, as mentioned, Leif Fatanu on the offensive line, and Jordan Tyson at wide receiver. The second team consisted of quarterback Sam Levitt, tight end Shimon Mateer, defensive lineman CJ Fight, and linebacker Sean Elliott. Some honorable mentions: Caleb McCullough, Ben Coleman, and Miles Ghost Rouser. There's some others that were runners up in that awards, but when you look at that haul, 8 in the first and second team, 11 total getting all conference. That just obviously speaks to the quality of the season. But I know there were some seasons ASU had in the Pac-12 where they weren't getting this much love even after some of their stand-up performances.
Yeah, winning can do some incredible things for you, and it shows the respect that ASU's gathered here on a conference basis in the first year in the league. What else can you say? Obviously, Scat. He is what he is, and it's wild to see that there were people that were like complaining that they don't feel that he deserved a first team all conference.
Who was the first team back?
RJ Harvey from UCF. I think they should have done 3. I don't know how they reach it if it's just a certain number of votes. I would imagine that's it, to where it's like, okay, like if you look at the second team, they had 4 tight ends on the second team. Because there's got to be like they just tied in votes. If I'm not,
yeah.
And coincidentally, Shimon Mateer was one of them, and another one of them was Jalen Conyers. They kind of had similar numbers. It's pretty much a push. So there you go.
Conyers had a good year.
Yeah, not too bad. But yeah, Taj Brooks, he should have been a first teamer, but not at the expense of either Harvey or obviously Scat. I think there just should have been 3. The run that Jordan Tyson was on, what he did at the late stages of the season was incredible. So. You got some on Scat there?
Oh no, I just saying, do they have they need a flex if they don't have it, just something like that.
That they don't.
All purpose.
Yeah, in the Pac-12, they had like an all-purpose person, which was super helpful in those circumstances. But again, for ASU, especially on the second team, because the first team, like those are the guys that were head and shoulders, that you knew were going to get, some high level. Although, Xavier Alford, that's something that is a, major, accomplishment for him, as it is for the others. But I mean, to see Sam Leavitt be the second team quarterback, I mean, if you would have told us that even at like a midway point of the season, I'm not talking about like in the spring when he had just transferred here and ASU won 3 games. Like even when ASU had like a winning record, like he didn't really hit his stride until I think I was, the midway. It took a handful of games, and so for him to be the second quarterback, the second team quarterback in a league that had some quarterbacks that were putting up some numbers, that's a big deal. To have a guy like Shimon Mateer come in and not only live up to but exceed expectations. CJ Fight to take that next step. He's a guy that we talked about a lot in the offseason of, okay, good freshman season, need to see a leap year 1 to year 2. He did just that. Keyshawn Elliott, he had some ups and downs, some availability issues, things like that, but he still got that recognition. So, when you win games, you guys kind of get the benefit of the doubt, or maybe they just are seen in a little bit different light than they would be, even if they kind of played the same way on a team that won 3 or 4 games.
All right, so those weren't the only honors that the Big 12 and the voting coaches bestowed upon the Sun Devils. Some major awards here. Coach of the Year had to be Kenny Dillingham. I mean, we'll talk nationally maybe soon enough, but Kenny was the clear choice as the Big 12 Coach of the Year. Offensive newcomer, Jordan Tyson, and kind of a fun note, I guess, fun depending on your definition of that. The defensive newcomer of the year for the Big 12, BJ Green, former Sun Devil, good kid.
There you go. That Jordan Tyson for BJ Green trade with Colorado and
Worked
ASU, I guess, worked out for everybody. Yeah, so that's one that again, that we might have to like crunch the numbers at some point, but man, Jordan Tyson in that few game stretch, again, I keep referring to like that last month or so of the season, but his numbers must be pretty astronomical compared to a lot of the league, because he's finished in the top like 10, 15 in some national categories. And he wasn't trending. It wasn't a guy like, again, McMillan, who had like 600 yards in one game earlier this season or something like that, to where you kind of can live off that for the year. He had to build his way up there. So those would be some interesting stats to go through to see how he compares with other receivers on a national level over maybe like the month of November or something like that.
And then one other major award, individual award, the Offensive Freshman of the Year, quarterback Sam Leavitt. Now, I've seen a lot of folks just kind of freaking out. Oh, he's going to take the bag. He's going to go out. Man, at this point, it'd be hard to say. I caught up with him after the game on the field. He was talking about, winning multiple Big 12 titles, that he's, we ain't seen nothing yet by the Sun Devil squad. And then, the words are good and those actions are there. And it seems like every indication he's going to stay. He's also pledged publicly to donate 100% of his individual merch sales back to the collective for his teammates. Now, I don't know, man. That doesn't seem like somebody who's, itching to leave.
Yeah, I mean, you figure in this day and age, if somebody's going to leave, being as young as he is, that it's going to be, for financial purposes. And so that just doesn't really add up. I mean, again, anybody can do anything. These are college-age people, but you just don't think that somebody is going to make that sort of unselfish commitment to essentially forego receiving NIL money so that others can receive it. That with the thought process of like, if Sam Leavitt's disposition were to be, you need to compensate me in any way, shape, or form that you can, because I'm QB1 and I'm a redshirt freshman that just led a team to the college football playoff. Everybody on the planet wants me. That doesn't seem to be the attitude here. And then I didn't make any comments, but definitely need to on Kenny Dillingham winning the Coach of the Year award. Very, very well deserved. I'm very glad that was not something that was shared, because at that point, there were a lot of other, coaches in consideration. Colorado, BYU, their head coaches are ones that were in that conversation for sure. But neither of those teams made it to the conference championship games. And also neither of them made the improvement that ASU made year over year. So I'm glad that didn't get watered down by a technicality of just trying to make it a participation trophy for a bunch of people.
So those, a fabulous haul for the Sun Devils in terms of guys that are, putting forth great seasons, some great signs for future growth and success for the Sun Devil program with some of the young guys as well. But Shamari Simmons got screwed, man. Like that was something that, like, let's talk about snubs. I mean, that was absolutely ridiculous. It's one of those situations, well, who are you going to take off the list? It doesn't matter. Shamari Simmons belongs on any list. I think he's had an absolutely amazing season. We'll get to the sack, hit, flag, targeting thing in a second, but good God Almighty, Shamari Simmons is an all-conference player.
Yeah, that's the biggest snub. I think a guy like Keith Abney, I thought he improved dramatically. Like I think he's someone that is deserving of at least as like an honorable mention sort of recognition. Moving to like the individual awards, it is my personal stance. I believe Cam Scadaboo should have won the Offensive Player of the Year in the conference. There were quite a lot of people on social media that did not agree with me. But you know what? Hey, and that's a conversation for a different time, but it's a fan base of a particular program located in and named after the state of Colorado. Doesn't seem like people actually watch football. Maybe they just pay attention to social media.
Okay, so I got bombarded with and my tweet was like, when Shedeur won Offensive Player of the Year, I just quote tweeted that, said, "A great season, no doubt," because he put forth a damn good season. Yeah. But I said, but the guy who won the Offensive Player of the Week 5 times not getting it is a little weird. I didn't say it's a travesty or anything like that because I'm not trying to take anything away from Shedeur's accomplishments. I said it was weird. And I got bombarded with dozens of, and almost, I was curious if your replies were the same. Did they all just be like Shedeur's draft stock? Like he's going to be a top pick. Like that's not the award.
Yeah, the draft, yeah, it was a very
it was weird.
Really soft and just touchy fan base, at least the population that were replying. I mean, it was this unnecessary emotion when you went basically like reacting to those sort of comments. I mean, I was a little less diplomatic, but I didn't take any personal shots, and it's being met with, obscenities or even things, I'll say it, of a racial nature. It happened, and I received that. So is what it is. I'm not going to let any of that, and I'm not saying that's representative of an entire fan base, just certainly the individuals that made the decisions they made. It's social media, it's Twitter, it can be a nightmare at times, of course. But yeah, it was the draft stock. It was, everybody's a hater, if you don't cheer for it's kind of the same thing that, and I'm not derailing this episode to talk about this program because ASU is a college football playoff championship program of the Big 12. But yeah, that was an interesting thing.
It was so weird
to see. But you know what? In my opinion, it's a program that is about individual accolades, and that starts at the top. And that's a difference between that program and the program that's going to be playing for a national championship here very soon that is team-centric. Not all about me. It's about we.
Absolutely. Before we dive into kind of some portal updates, because as we record this on Monday night, today was the first day that the December transfer portal windows open, and my God, did the floodgates open. Not necessarily for the Sun Devils, but just nationally. I believe last year on the first day there's like 551. I think by noon today there's over 1,000 nationally. I don't know what the final number ends up, but should say that talking about Shamari Simmons, good God Almighty, he destroyed Rocco Becht, and I thought, and he was flagged for targeting because any hard hit in college football gets a flag eventually. Yeah. The targeting call was upheld upon review. He was ejected. That took place in the second half, which means he will miss the first half of the Peach Bowl.
Was it called on the field? I thought it wasn't called on the field, but called
not initially.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's like eventually it's like any hard hit, at some point it's going to be a whistle.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No. That's why I was actually shocked that it didn't. Yeah.
Because like it was like he came clean and free, hit him, and if you look, like Becht does hunch down. He's like kind of in a squatting position when at the point contact is made. So it's like, what is the defender supposed to do when a quarterback? Anyway, Kenny Dillingham did publicly state that the appeals process is in motion. Whether that bears any fruit, we don't know. But I know there's a lot of folks that took issue with that call. I don't know. I did find that the Daily Mail over in the United Kingdom had a article that a human being wrote that said that fans are calling for Shamari Simmons to be banned for dirty hit.
People in England talking about college football, that to me is like the very definition of, dude, stay in your lane. What are you doing?
Roy Kent would not put up with that.
So for an appeal like this, is it appealed to the Big 12 or the NCAA?
I'm not sure.
Because that makes me think, like, if it's to the NCAA, is this something that can ASU get the brass in the conference to participate in the. I don't know how that process goes, and if there are advocates that could maybe help your cause, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm not sure of the specifics other than it is in the process, whatever that happens. So hopefully that is, because, and again, this is just every time something like this happens, go back and I just make the same plea. There needs to be a tiered. So maybe this is a soccer tie-in that the Brits can get behind. A red and yellow card system, like some egregious dirty hits, immediate ejection, red card them. But like a hit like that, where it's in the heat of the moment, an offensive player maybe turns at the last minute or hunches down or whatever. Sure, flag him 15 yards, whatever. But that's not an ejectionable offense nor suspension worthy offense. There needs to be some common sense.
Yeah, and I think under no circumstances should the outcome be that you need to be affected for the next game that you play. If you get kicked out of the game with 30 seconds left instead of in the first 30 seconds, then just, oh well, so be it. You know what I mean? Like, seriously. Or even especially, I think that I'm thinking through before I say, but I was gonna say, like, in the postseason, because you know how like there are different rules in different sports. Major League Baseball, you have your ghost runner on second, a stupid rule in and of itself, but you don't have that in extra innings in the postseason. So, you know, you adjust the regular season versus the postseason rules as they go. But yeah, there needs to be something, whether it's, or even have it to where it's like, okay, you're not suspended for the next first half or anything like that. But if you pile them up, maybe if you get a certain amount over the course of the season, I think don't they do that in basketball or something like
or foul, soccer, if you have 5 yellow cards, it's a match suspension.
Yeah, like that sort of thing. If it shows that, okay, this is a dirty player who is doing this repeatedly, then we need to intervene. That makes sense. I get it. But if it's just a bang play that is these, and so many of these are so incredibly questionable and like 51-49 type of things where it could really go either way. And I get it. I'm all for, you know, player safety and trying to prevent head injuries. Hell, I watched the Aaron Hernandez, you know, documentary thing on Netflix and the one they had on Hulu and all that. I get it. I get that CTE is a big deal. And I mean that very seriously. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't, you know, have more of a pragmatic approach to how you police it.
Yeah, so hopefully good luck to Shamari because he deserves to play the entirety of the Peach Bowl.
But the good thing is that's just going to motivate Cam Scadaboo, and he's going to run for like 250 first half yards because that's what he does.
Yeah, all right. So as we close things out, did mention that this is the first day of the portal window opening. It will run through Saturday, December 28th. Now, of course, that's just for entering the portal. Players that are in there, they can then commit and join other next team or withdraw from that point. ASU, as of the time of this recording, has 9 players that have publicly declared that they are entering the portal. Now, here's something that is interesting. A few of them are going to continue to play for the Sun Devils during this playoff run. I thought was really cool, and this is, but not surprising because Kenny Dillingham has been a kind of player empowerment led coach. What's in the best interest for his guys. Every guy since he's gotten here that has jumped in the portal, you see him tweeting positive stuff. You're like, wishing you the best. Then your next team is getting a real dog or a real speed demon or whatever. How hugely complimentary.
And it's also like seems personalized.
Yeah,
it's not just like he's a great guy. Best of luck. Carbon, repeat. Like it seems like he's actually like saying something about that person and what they offer.
And I've heard also that it's not just a social media post, quick tweet or whatever. That there's actually work behind the scenes to help these players find the best place for them. Now he did say today that he's told the players that are wanting to enter the portal that they should enter the portal now, because if they had to wait after the playoff run, obviously other teams that maybe make their additions, or you don't want to have those players behind the 8 ball, but that they're still able to participate in this playoff run, kind of have your cake and eat it too, which I think is really cool because as he mentioned, like some of these players have been parts of the success on the field and should be able to go through this run, experience this, continue to play and on the sport's biggest stage, but also with an eye towards finding the best spot for them in the future.
Yeah, number one, it's obviously a great thing to do. Like these seemingly little moves are not small deals because that really means something. And word travels about that. I mean, you just can't be like gatekeepers or bad mouth people who are leaving the program, especially because, as we'll go through, the names that are on the list so far today, with maybe one exception, are just guys that aren't getting a lot of playing time and are not looking like starters for next year. So you're not going to hold guys back in that sort of circumstance. Now, then I'm eager to see what happens as far as that, as it relates to, if guys make a decision of where they're going to go. Or, I mean, I know it's a very, very small chance that this is the case. Let's say, yeah, like what if somebody commits to one of those schools? Again, given the names that are entering the portal from ASU right now, you don't think that they're probably not going to be leaping to a program like that. So we don't necessarily need to go through the minutia quite yet, unless that circumstance comes about. But yeah, it's a really good move because ASU is just doing a lot of goodwill, and it's not like forced PR. It's just the nature of how these people are as human beings. They're just doing so many things to improve the public opinion of ASU locally among the fan base on a national scale. Like ASU's, unless you just actively don't like them, they're kind of a darling of college football right now. And coming out of the darkness of what's been going on the last few years, that's a big deal. So again, it never hurts, and because we've seen the Austin Nunez, sometimes guys come back. And so that could be a situation where maybe you have a guy that leaves that you're kind of chapped that he left, but you do it the right way, and who knows what the future brings. Maybe there's another opportunity down the road, or maybe there's something that can lead to something. Just never a bad idea to be kind.
Yeah, and again, with the portal, just because you enter doesn't mean that you're leaving. I mean, we've seen a couple instances where Sun Devil players jump in and come back and decide that they do want to remain a part of the program. And yeah, it costs nothing to be kind is actually, I think, what I tweeted verbatim last December, kind of comparing a Kenny Dillingham tweet to the I believe, and again, I don't want to talk about that other school, northeast of here, but just when they had the whole like the player left and like the head coach of the program and the star quarterback tweeted out some like, I don't even know who that is.
Yeah, just
like kind of like what? There's no need for that. Anyway, let's run down these 9 Sun Devils. This is kind of the order that I have here listed in terms of its chronological order in terms of their announcements. Wide receiver Corbin Hendricks, some good tools. Just has never been able to really work his way up the depth chart there. He's jumping in the portal. He's after working with the scout team during his couple years as a Sun Devil.
Yeah, so that's someone that came in with some good size. I know Hood Rubino was pretty high on him as a recruit, but just somebody that couldn't really cut into the lineup. And, at a position group like ASU where wide receiver, obviously there's a huge gap between the first guy and the second guy and beyond. So if you're not able to, jump in and get any playing time, obviously guys like Stovall and Xavier Guillory, among others, really stepped up, but there were still opportunities for playing time. So if you really couldn't grab any, then that's just kind of a writing on the wall situation. And that is what it is. And it happens at every team in the country.
Yeah. And, of course, with this 2025 signing class, which we'll dive into a little bit more next week, a number of wide receivers in that group, a number of wide receivers also from Texas, like Corbin Hendricks in that group as well. Up next, in terms of the timing of the announcements, roughly speaking, was one of the 3 so far that you could say were in the 2 deep. Safety, Kamari Wilson, the former 4-star, played at Florida, then transferred here to Arizona State, was backing up Miles Rouser at the safety spot. He is actually it appears is going to be one of the guys that's sticking around through the playoff run.
Yeah, so for the season, Wilson has 12 games played, 11 tackles on the year. He was a big time recruit. As you go by like the recruiting services, I think he was technically rated, and not just out of high school. I'm talking about as a transfer. I think it was like the highest rated transfer that ASU acquired this past offseason. Had a very good freshman season at Florida, but things have just kind of tailed off since then. So that's a position group, obviously, where ASU, has a lot of guys, and they're going to return a fair amount, and they're playing well. So you figure that they can recruit to a high level as well. So Wilson's probably someone that has the faith in himself that he should be a full-time starter at a fairly major college program. I saw that he's already reported some G5 offers, immediately, really. So
like FAU was in there.
Yeah. So so again, not somebody that's not going to have a hard time finding a D1, an FBS home. But probably someone that just feels like he can bet on himself and be a starter, at the college football level.
After that, wide receiver Caleb Black and cornerback Keontez Bradley and made their announcements. Two guys, two younger Sun Devils, already have used a redshirt year. Just with Black, we talked about in camp was always getting open, good route runner. Just had some issues with drops. Was a pretty consistent factor there. Keontez Bradley, great physical tools, made some plays here and there. Just was really passed up by kind of the ASU's younger corners as the season went on. In recent weeks, has been donning the gold jersey in practice on the scout team.
Yeah, if you talk about these ones, and I believe Hendricks falls in the same category, I've always been a believer that, like, after 2 years in a program, you kind of figure out what's going to happen. 1 year, a little too short. But I think after 2 years, sometimes the writing typically is placed upon the wall. So that's why you have, a few of the ones that we've been talking about so far fall in that category. They came in for Dillingham's first class. And then, not a lot of time in year one, and then not a lot of time in year two. Some of them may not even, I don't know if Black even played in a single game this year. And so when you look at that picture and see that, okay, it's been 2 years, not a lot is happening, and the program is just accelerating at light speeds right now. So playing time is probably going to be even tougher to come by. It just makes sense. Again, these are smart situations. These are players that probably, most of them I think have 3 years of playing eligibility left. Good opportunity to find some place to make the most of it.
Yeah, ASU's got a lot of good young corners. Rodney Bimage passed up Bradley on terms of the depth chart. Bimage has been a guy who's really had impressive camps and has seen playing time this year. Plaz Johnson, Chris Johnson the second, Tony Lewis and Cuba as well. A lot of good young corners there, and some more coming in 2025 class. So good luck. And Bradley, I believe, is from Ohio, so perhaps one of those situations where maybe you want to get a little bit closer to home. Just like the next guy, tight end Marqueston Douglas, came over from Florida State after having a couple touchdowns for the Seminoles during their big year. Really has not been any factor with the passing game, as Shimon Mateer has been the go-to guy. Douglas has a catch for 3 yards, making his difference, splitting time with Cameron Harpole. This is another guy that'll be around for the playoff run is Kenny Dillingham. Quote tweeted Douglas's announcement with, "Can't wait to finish this thing out and then find you a spot closer to home." From Tally to AZ to, and so we'll see where Douglas ends up.
Yeah, obviously Dillingham and Douglas have a connection that began at Florida State, made its way to ASU. I was really intrigued by what he could possibly do, just his size and athleticism. That's a combination that was very, very intriguing. But again, Shimon Matera had what I believe to be, quite a good season. Cameron Harpole has had a role on this team, especially in some of these larger, packages for the run game. And then you got to keep in mind, the guys that they have both between, the red shirt this year and coming in for the next class, you got some intriguing options at tight end. So again, the playing time, if you just kind of read the tea leaves and say, you know what, like, didn't get a lot of time. He played in every game, did Douglas, but only that one reception. I think was that at Texas State. I think that's sounding familiar to me. Maybe it was when he caught that one pass.
Mississippi. I think Texas State was where Sam had the pick where he thrown the Douglas on the seam and he went high.
That might have been. I remember it being thrown toward him, but early in the season,
the targets were
limited. Yeah, exactly. So again, it's just an opportunity, and I know that there's some folks that maybe not sour, but just displeased by this one, and maybe they're citing that combination of size and athleticism, or came from Florida State, or whatever combination that you want to give. But you just kind of take things for what they are. ASU needed people who could catch the ball, and you got one pass for 3 yards. And there are probably other spots where you can do a lot more than that on a game-by-game basis, much less on an annual basis.
Yeah, Mateo will be back next year. You're, of course, Jaden Fortier, as you mentioned, coming off the redshirt year as he makes his way back from a knee injury. Coaches are really excited about his potential. And in this 2025 class, the highest rated guy, AJ Ia from California, high 4-star guy. A lot of potential there. So ASU,
he's like 6'6", right? Like he's one of those guys. Like, dang, like I didn't realize how big he is.
Yeah, I mean he's going to be
240, 250. Like he's just ready made. Yeah.
Yeah. So ASU's going to be just fine at tight end. Now moving on, along the defensive line, Jamon Tapp, former Texas Longhorn edge rusher there. Never really able. He was kind of a deep backup there along that line. And of course, Clayton Smith, Prince Dorba, Elijah O'Neal, Justin Watley have been manning those positions for the Devils for the Lions' share of the season. Tapp was never able to make his mark.
Yeah, and that one was, again, you get really roped in by the intrigue of players. If you look at what they were evaluated as and ranked as a high school recruit, versus what they've actually done at the college level since then. I mean, he was like a top 75, I think, definitely top 100 overall recruit. Like if you look at like every player on the ASU roster, he I think is one of the top 3 to 5 guys who, in terms of who was rated the highest as a recruit. So you just see that and you're like, all right, like that's got to be based on something that he can do here. Maybe at Texas it wasn't coming together. Maybe they just got a lot of talent. I mean, they're a back-to-back playoff team. But yeah, he only played in the one game, which was Texas State. I remember that for a fact, seeing him out there. It just didn't quite come together. So it just could be a guy that's not going to live up to recruiting hype, or maybe he finds a new home and gets more playing time and puts that into action.
Yeah. Wide receiver Jamal Young, a walk-on, announced his intent to jump in the portal. Defensive tackle Kyron Borda, who came over a couple classes ago, coming off a knee injury, not able to really kind of make his mark there. And then the third one of the three that was kind of perhaps most notable, most impactful, quarterback LaTerrence Welch. It was first reported, though, earlier today, as this was kind of something as maybe as a surprise, but learned that as first reported by Sun Devil source, Welch was dismissed from the team, and obviously people did not see him participate in the Big 12 title game at all. So he is now no longer part of the Sun Devil team and is jumping into the portal.
Yeah, which is obviously unfortunate on a number of levels. If we're focusing specifically on the field, I mean, he had that huge pick six against UCF that really turned the tide. Also had interception against Arizona. He was someone that improved quite a bit over the course of the season, someone that we both had very high hopes for, coming over from LSU, again, in that same conversation as a guy like Tapp, where he was a big-time recruit, came from a big-time program. Okay, like that's what you want to see. So, yeah, that's an unfortunate thing. Don't really know the nature of what it was that resulted in this disciplinary action. And as far as if that's something that is going to have any sort of negative impact on his ability to find a reputable next stop. But as long as that part works out, whoever gets him is going to get a talented player. As long as whatever disciplinary issues caused him to have his Sun Devil career ended prematurely, don't continue.
All right. I think that's as of now. Obviously, these things rapidly evolve, and pretty soon ASU. We've already seen some players out there from other schools that are reporting ASU offers. So it's going to be a wild time, even though there won't be an ASU game for a couple of weeks. It's going to be certainly active in the portal sphere, whether the guys are going out or coming back in the next wave. ASU, of course, now becoming quite the attractive destination for folks across the country.
Yeah, it was interesting to hear, Kenny Dillingham on, sports radio earlier today here on Monday, talking about just the dynamically different nature of, last year or, the last couple of years, his efforts in the transfer portal. Obviously, he's been highly successful, but just like his sales pitch, so to speak, was talking about winning and how people might have scoffed and that may have happened. And now it's happening and happened. And that, athletes that he's contacting, because he did a handful of that on day one here on Monday, are like, I'm glad you called me. I've been hoping that you'd call me, or I hope that I'd hear from Arizona State, because they see what's happening. So, that's a very interesting thing, because, again, you think about the transfers that ASU's been able to land, whether it's Scat, whether it's Levitt, whether it's Jordan Tyson, whether it's Shamari Simmons, Keyshawn Elliott, like the top players on ASU's roster here in this college football playoff, by and large, are all transfers. But those are guys that came here from those terrible seasons. Think about what ASU can do if they were able to get those players off of NCAA sanctions and investigations and back-to-back 3-win seasons. You flip that around, and no matter what happens in that Peach Bowl, the narrative of what you can sell to people as far as transfers are concerned and recruits are concerned, for that matter, and certainly hoping that the NIL capacity for ASU, improves, or if there are things that are going to level the playing field in the forthcoming future, whatever the case may be, ASU's, market value right now is very high. And that's a great thing when you have this transfer market that, things are still going to be at a very high level, no matter what. I mean, if you don't win in the college football playoff, you're still there. You're still at a seat at the table, and that resonates a lot with recruits and transfers.
All right, I think that's going to do it for this episode of Speak of the Devils. No guest to thank, just a couple of guys talking about a playoff football team today. But make sure you stay with us on the social media side of things. Obviously, this is the holiday season, but big game coming up. Transfer portal's open. Lots happening. You can follow the show on Twitter at SOTD Podcast, on Instagram at Speak of the Devils. Make sure you follow us on YouTube. A lot of good content there. And follow on Facebook as well. And then give me a follow on all things social at bdenny29.
And you can follow me at Joe Healy42. And obviously, we got to give a thank you and shout out to our awesome sponsors, championship level sponsors, beginning with Jones Auto Group, of course, devilsdigest.com. Burrito Express was in this very facility where we are right now. Of course, love to see that and everything that they're doing. Cactus Sports, you got to stock up on some Big 12 champion gear. I hit the order now as soon as that stuff was unveiled myself. I'm sure y'all did the same.
Also featured on 3TV this morning.
There you go. Exactly. See this whole synergy deal that we got going on? It's a good thing. Then Spaghetti Shack, of course, a huge thank you to them. Sun Devil owned, not only Sun Devil owned, but Sparky, the Sun Devil owned and operated, and Sun Devil Family Charities as well. A big thank you to our longtime sponsor there.
Yeah, and make sure you also shop at homefieldapparel.com. Also, you can head over to Cactus Sports where they got some great home field stuff there as well. But if you're the online shopping type and the holiday season's coming up, make sure you head over there for premium vintage collegiate apparel. They're a great ASU collection. And you can use our own personal offer code to get 15% off your first order at Home Field. SUN24, SUN24, gets you the 15% off at homefieldapparel.com. And once you're done supporting all of our amazing sponsors, make sure to drop us a 5-star review on the podcast platform of your choice. Joe and I will be back next week as we'll be diving into the signing class, latest on the transfer portal, and just talking about a playoff football team.